You're listening to the Design Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whyte, and in this podcast series, we explore the career journeys of design and engineering leaders from the world of physical product development. In this episode, I'm joined by Jeff Baldwin, founder and principal designer at People, Places and Things. We discuss how he got into design, making the move from designer to leader and then to something in between, designing for social impact, overcoming doubt and imposter syndrome, embracing failure and learning from mistakes, the role of AI in design, flag football and launching his own business, WinWin Athletics. There's quite a lot to unpack, so let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Design Journeys podcast. Today joining me is Jeff Baldwin. Jeff is a creative leader who designs objects, interfaces, spaces and experiences. He's the founder and principal designer at People, Places and Things. The design practice that learns from people, is inspired by places and great things. I've pinched that directly from your LinkedIn profile, Jeff. And your clients include Colgate, Hills Pets, Cedar Health, Education Foundation for America, and Joby Capital. During your career, you've worked with or for the likes of IDEO and IDEO.org, Luna, Code Theory, plus a few other places that no doubt we'll talk about. Started your career, your career started kind of design life at the University of Cincinnati, studying industrial design. And here we are today. So welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. That's a great intro, man.
Thank you very much. So it's made all the more easier when you've got such an interesting career as you've had, Jeff. So I do appreciate you coming on. So why don't we start right at the beginning then, Jeff? So why design? What inspired you to choose that as something to pursue academically? Why did you study at university?
Yeah,
where was that born from?
That's a great question. So I'm the son of an art teacher, and I've been drawing since I can remember. Like I probably was drawing before I could walk, And I always was interested in it. And when I was growing up, I grew up in northern Kentucky, just outside of Cincinnati, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I went to college. And like a lot of designers have these awesome stories about taking apart a toaster or a lawnmower or something. I never had one of those stories, so I always felt bad. I was like, maybe I'm a bad designer. And then I remembered when I was a kid, this is like in the 80s, like footwear design was not a thing. Like now everybody wants to design shoes. It's like the thing to do. There's whole schools set up to do it. But back when I was a kid, like no one knew that anyone designed anything, let alone a shoe. But I was obsessed with shoes. My parents called me Imelda. If you're old enough to get that joke, good for you. I love shoes so much. And I would take them apart. I wanted to know what like an air pocket was made out of, or like, I would modify my shoes to like make them look different. And I remember remembering that, like reflecting on that a few years ago, being like, oh no, I had my product dissection story. It was just like a soft good, So that's what I was so interested in products. And I had a class when I was in high school where my teacher was lucky enough that he knew what industrial design was. And I remember liking his class. It was like a little graphic design class. And I got to do a bunch of different stuff in it. And I remember thinking, like, what are you going to do in college? Well, I want to do something that's fun. And Mr. Richards' class is fun. So I remember asking him, I'm like, hey, what's shoe design? Like, if I wanted to design shoes, what would that be? And he was like, oh, that'd be an industrial designer. And I mean, for someone to know that in Kentucky is pretty wild and lucky. But that's when I was like, okay, this is what I need to go do. So that's what started me on this path.
Fantastic. Well, it's great that you've had that experience early on. The teacher, it's something that not a lot of people get, is it? So you get the right teacher, they can be so inspirational. So wonderful. So shoe design then. So how many shoes have you designed throughout your career?
Maybe barely one. So I did an internship at Nike when I was in school, and I worked on one inline shoe. It was on the women's running team. And so that shoe sold in the holiday season of 2006. So it's been quite a long time, but it was an Air Max 180.
Oh,
It
nice.
was it was a cool shoe. I mean, like I
Yeah.
wasn't the only person that worked on it. I was an intern, so I had a boss, and
Mm,
I was working with her on it. But I've seen people wear it, and it's cool. That was like the first moment of my career where I was like, oh, I
mm,
helped design that thing. But I also later on when I was at IDEO, we did a project with Under Armour to help them get into the basketball category.
mm,
And so that project was, we did a lot of design work. Like they had some shoes they already
mm,
had worked on. And we went out, we kind of helped them understand the landscape of basketball a little bit better. Cause I mean, at the time they were, very much a cleated company, like
mm,
football, lacrosse, baseball. And we wanted to help them understand what it meant to get into the basketball space, what kind of products they should make. And so we did some concept shoes for them. So I have designed a few, but after that point, like shoes got me into design, and then
mm,
early in my career at Cincinnati, I did 5 internships when I was at UC, and I remember getting to Design Continuum, which is an awesome
mm.
consultancy based out of Boston. I think they've changed their name because of crazy acquisitions, but they're still Design Continuum to me. And I remember going there and realizing, like, whoa, I can design anything. Like, this is, and that was the first place that I ever learned that you can like do research and talk to people.
Yeah.
I was like, holy cow, okay, I can design anything, and I can talk to people, I can get their feedback, I can like invent opportunities based off of like things that I see and hear and feel.
Mm,
Okay, this is cool. And so that kind of changed my trajectory. I think if I had to do one thing every day for the rest of my life, like shoes would have been cool. But from that moment, I was just kind of like hooked on this creative greed. Like I just wanted to do as
yeah.
much as I possibly could. And so, yeah, that's where things branched.
Awesome. So, yeah, you mentioned when we spoke a few weeks ago that actually you're happiest when you're designing stuff, and that clearly comes through in just the short while you've been talking today. But it's definitely still drives you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. I think that every design career is different, and I
Mm,
think early in my career, I kind of followed like the path.
mm,
You're like a junior industrial designer, you're a senior industrial designer, you're a lead, and then you become a boss and like a director,
yeah.
and you slowly get your hands taken off of the steering wheel. Um, and to be I think there are designers like me, there are creative people like me who just love making stuff, and I have a ton
Mm,
of experience leading teams and being accountable for people and supporting them. And I'm very passionate about it. And I have strong opinions about how to do it well and how not to do it well, based on my own experiences messing up. But I still like, there's a feeling you get when you put down a prototype, when you make
mm,
something, when something it feels good in your head and you write it down and it looks good on paper and you try it out. It's an addictive feeling. It's like there is,
mm,
and I mean, and you continue to refine and things get clearer and clearer. Like every single prototype or sample or rev is super exciting. And I remember when I was at this brand strategy shop called Co-Collective, and I remember they brought me on. They're like, how do we make more stuff? We have all these great
mm,
ideas, and I remember telling them like, well, to make more stuff, you have to make more stuff. You have to like prototype. You have to like actually, the idea isn't good enough. And I remember being there, and my job was very, I was a director person, and everything was very
mm,
strategic. And I love storytelling. I love simplifying things and presenting big ideas in simple ways. But in that role, I got way off the path of making. And I remember there was one
mm,
project we were doing with Microsoft, and we built some prototypes for them for some like future of the office type of hardware. And we actually like I convinced everybody to like build some prototypes. And I remember like getting the samples back from a model maker, and it was just like 10 years just like had like gone backwards in time for me. And I was like, oh man, I forget how much I missed this. And kind of from that moment, I kind of stopped the path that I was on, and just started to shape a new one. And I think like I'm
yeah.
kind of a weird, I feel like I'm a weird designer. And maybe other people
Mm,
listening to this this will resonate with them. I feel
Mm,
like right now in the design world, like if you're a doer, you're young or you're in the middle of your career, and if you're later in your career, you have to be a manager, you have to be a leader. And I feel like I'm in this weird space, and I feel like a little bit alone, but I'm not naive enough to believe that I'm
mm,
the only designer or creative person that feels this way. I have a ton of experience like leading things and
mm,
supporting people, but I love to do, and so it's this weird, I feel like it's this weird middle ground that, um, I find myself in and a lot of other creative people
mm.
might. And, I've just chosen to embrace it and, not be embarrassed. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a prototypical, hands-on designer. I'm not a prototypical leader. I'm just a creative person, and so that's the enigma that I find myself in now.
I think that's a fairly common trend. Certainly, it's something that isn't exclusive to design either. I think with a lot of professional creative people, you don't have to be in a creative industry to be creative, obviously, but there's that. I don't know whether it's just the way things are, but as you go through a career, you feel obliged or it's expected of you to go up the ladder, to kind of
Yeah,
chase that opportunity, chase the money, chase the progression, the responsibility. And the obvious way is to take on more responsibility. But as a creative, whether that's in kind of in design or business services or whatever it may be, you get to a point where you can no longer be an individual contributor because you've got a team that are looking after you. You might be involved from afar or advising or directing a guide, which satisfies some people, but I do find that be a common theme with senior and director level designers, and engineers as well, to be fair,
yeah.
where they get to put, you know what, Chris, I just really miss rolling my sleeves up and just getting stuck into projects.
Well, it's
Really
funny,
miss
man.
it.
Like I feel like in LinkedIn, if you look at LinkedIn, I feel like every day I see a new person starting a little like 1-2 person
Yeah,
consultancy.
absolutely.
And I think that's like, I think we're in a moment where economically, like these types of companies can thrive.
Mm,
And a lot of the typical agencies have been acquired. And so the overhead is
mm,
insane. And I think they'll still be successful, but there's more than ever. It's like you've got these people that have tons and tons and tons of experience making and
mm,
leading. And they're there for companies to partner with and hire one person, and it's like you're hiring three, and it's a way for that person to
mm.
still be a leader, still like shape things, but
Yeah.
also get their hands on and get back to their craft and do the things that they love, because no one becomes a designer to be in charge of other people. You become a designer to make things with other
Hmm.
people, and that never changes. And I think it's funny when I look at LinkedIn, I see every single day, I see another person starting their own thing. And,
Mm.
on one side, you're like, man, like how many boutique design companies can there be? But
Mm.
maybe a lot, because maybe there's a
Yeah.
lot of people in a similar situation. They're like, man, I like this, but
Mm.
I miss making. So,
Yeah, I think the vast majority of design agencies are quite small, like less than 10 people. And I think at that level, you still, as an owner, you still got a kind of skin in the game, haven't you? You're still able to be involved and kind of do some sketches when you need to, but you're certainly involved in the client briefing. And I think that's probably the happy medium between kind of delivering bigger projects. And I think a lot of people actually enjoy sharing their knowledge as well, and kind of bringing up juniors and kind of, because as great as it is kind of seeing your product on the shelves or walking down the street, in the case of your kind of your footwear, um, actually seeing people that you've trained deliver that as well. I find
yeah,
that's incredibly rewarding as someone that's done that in my career. It's that I get as much a kick out of that as I do delivering projects for clients. It's just a slightly different one. It's great.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so you've been doing this now for quite some time, and like you say, your kind of career's done a bit of a bit of a hump, hasn't it? Kind of going to a level where you've had how many people did you have working for you at kind of at the peak?
I'd say like the most like people I was supporting was at IDEO.org.
Hmm.
I was a co-lead for their New York studio, and so that studio was 25 people, and the design team I
Mm.
would say was about half of that, like
Yeah.
12, 13 people of all walks of life. So visual designers, industrial
Mm.
designers, business designers, UX folks, research people, like human
Mm.
factors people. And so and then that office we were cohabitating with IDEO New York. So
Mm.
that was another like 50-person company. And the appeal of that was, I spent 4 years early in my career at IDEO Chicago. And
Mm.
then when I came back to .org, however many years later, it was kind of fun because it was like coming home, but like going to the
Mm.
moon at the same time. It was like the culture that I remembered. And I think that was one of the
Yeah.
reasons why, I was an appealing hire was, I brought a lot of design experience and a multidisciplinary
Mm.
approach, but I also had like, lived at IDEO before. And so
Mm.
as these two groups of people, like from .org and from IDEO New York were kind of cohabitating, it was nice to be this
Mm.
guy that was kind of in the middle that spoke both languages. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And
that's the most I've been accountable for.
yeah, and like I say, with a multidisciplinary team there, as a manager, you've got to wear many different hats, and you've got a lot more to think about than just kind of industrial design at this point, haven't you? You've got to be able to answer questions on all manner of different things. So, but
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about, for those that are listening that might not know the difference between IDEO and IDEO.org. We were chatting briefly earlier about that. Perhaps you could describe kind of the setup with IDEO for those that don't know. Maybe you could describe that, and then how IDEO.org relates to that and how it's different.
Yeah, I mean, IDEO is, one of the coolest design companies in the world. They when I was, coming out of school, it was like a dream job, and so to get to work there after school was, I mean, I tell people it was like grad school. That's where I learned how I think and why I think. And, my first 4 years in Chicago, I worked on everything you can imagine,
Mm.
strategic things, executional things, storytelling, research, strategy,
Hmm.
uh, you know, physical products, services, things on screens.
Yeah.
It's a incredibly creative environment. It changes every couple of years. They like reinvent
Mm.
themselves. Um, but I was there during a pretty unique time. And then .org kind of spun out of what IDEO had always done. There was two women, Jocelyn Whyte and Patrice Martin, very, very focused and passionate about designing in the social sector. And so they together founded IDEO. And .org it's technically a separate entity to IDEO, although
Hmm.
they do overlap a ton and cohabitate in some locations.
Hmm.
But they're a design organization that's technically a nonprofit, and they're focused solely on using design to solve challenges in vulnerable communities around the world. And so
Hmm.
that can take shape in a lot of different ways. So when I was at .org, a couple of the programs I was involved in leading, one was a program. It was a partnership with
Hmm.
um, JP Morgan Chase to design digital financial tools for low income Americans. And so that
Hmm.
project was incredibly wide ranging because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of different types of digital tools that you can design to help people be
Yeah.
more financially healthy. Um, there was a practice at the time with the Department for International Development, DFID,
Hmm.
which is like the UK version of USAID, and that whole program was all about approaching funding for social impact in a like
Hmm.
bottom up way. Typically, there's a problem, we're
Hmm.
going to dump a ton of money at it, drop like a lot of things, resources at it, and hope it works. And this was more like a bottom up approach of what if you gave .org the funding and we went out and put challenges out to the world. How might we solve for X, Y, and Z in these types of situations? And then we had a platform that we used to basically like get ideas from entrepreneurs, small businesses, individuals, educators, large businesses, to solve those challenges we were putting out. And then we would take that funding and put it behind their ideas, and we would put design resources behind those projects. It was a project we called Amplify. It was awesome. And so again, those projects ranged from like urban resilience to reproductive health, and it was all around the world. And we would basically, after we would fund, we would choose like 10 teams, 10 partners for a certain challenge. We would convene them in a location, usually like Nairobi, run them through a workshop where we would kind of bring them up to speed on human-centered design. We'd start doing prototyping, and then we would launch projects with all of them. A handful of them we would be very hands-on with and do proper projects with. All of them we would provide design stewardship for and funding for. But yeah, .org is amazing. Like I said, it was like coming home, because it was IDEO, it was all the things, that I remember, like, empathy as a social currency, and just a lot of the creative freedom and ability to not be an expert and to learn and figure things out. But it was like going to the moon, because to that point, I'd never worked in the social sector before. And so, it was much different than everything I'd ever done before. We did more prototyping than we ever did. We were in context designing more than I ever had. Like if you're working in Nairobi, you're not going there for a week and coming home, and working in your nice, comfy design studio. You're going to be there for a month, and you're going to be down the street from the problem, and your room that you're staying in is going to turn into your project space. And if you have an idea, you're going to go down the street and you're going to try it and see if it works, and I think it was challenging, but there's a lot of ways in which that kind of changed and evolved the way I work still to this day.
Oh, massively. And I think the stuff in Africa is really interesting as well, because you've got to throw all of your kind of preconceptions of what goes into a product out of the window almost, because you've got a whole different set of conditions to consider. I've got people that I know that are designing refrigeration for medical, for pharmaceutical kind of drug delivery for Africa, and obviously you've got to contend with kind of power outages. So you can't just have a normal refrigerator. You've got to think about how does it keep the medicine cool enough or at the right temperature. You've got kind of maybe diagnostics equipment that it needs to run on have a reliable battery pack. There's all these kind of things that we take for granted in the Western world, and I guess as a designer, those are exciting challenges and extremely rewarding as well, because most people I speak to these days, they just want to work on meaningful stuff. You can park the salary and the benefits to one side. It's like, am I bringing joy to people, or am I impacting people's lives in a positive way, like literally changing lives? And I think that's the wonderful thing about design.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was an awesome job. I loved working at .org. Unfortunately, I was starting to have my wife and I were starting to have kids at the time, so like bedtime stories were harder to tell when you're like half a world away. But the one thing I will say about what you just the kind of challenges that you just mentioned, I think when I worked at .org, it was around like 2017. I think some of these principles that I'm going to share like are more prevalent now in other sectors of design. But when I was at .org, it became like very, very clear that you have to design with people and not for them. And I think that was a really interesting challenge for me personally. I think other designers at .org too, and I think designers in the social sector now and outside of it are also kind of finding themselves in similar situations. Like, you're a designer, how things can get made, you understand what a good experience might be like, but you're solving a problem in a place that you don't live, you've never lived, you're not gonna live, And so why should you make that decision? You know?
Mm.
And so you really have to start to shift like how you work. And I think at first it's a little bit hard because there's ego involved. You're like, but
Mm.
this is what I do. I love doing this. Like design is about making decisions. The more decisions I can make, the more design I'm doing. And you're asking me to not make any more decisions and to give up responsibility. And I think, the more you do it, the more you trust, the more you, again, like design with people, include people in the
Mm.
process that normally aren't included in the process. You start to like allow your creativity to be a vehicle. So you still get to
Mm.
do all the things that you love to do. You still get to be a craftsperson. You still get to be strategic. You still get to be, thoughtful, about the
Mm.
details of how things are created. But you're starting to like do it with people, and you're just a vessel. And like
Absolutely.
it's not like you're just executing what someone else says all the time,
Mm.
but you're refining their perspective, and the fact that their
Mm.
perspective is included is massive. But I think you're seeing that more and more in work
Mm.
now. I mean, like I did a project with Colgate a year ago on a brand called Fabuloso. It's a cleaner, and most cleaners
Mm.
right now, like companies are trying to ship less water, so they're trying to further concentrate Fabuloso, and they're like, what should the
Mm.
packaging and bottle look like? And it's a product that is primarily used by in Mexico and by Mexican Americans. And so for that project, it was like it's a team of people like me. We did
Mm.
have like my partner on the client side at Colgate. She is from Mexico, and we just agreed. We were like, we need a design squad. Like, let's find some people. Let's recruit some
Mm.
people who use this product who are not designers, and let's just include them every week of the process. Every single
Mm.
meeting that each week we'll have, our check-in meeting, and they'll be a part of it. So wherever we are, it's like obviously we're going to go talk to these people and do ethnography and learn from them.
Mm.
Like everybody does that now, but we're also going to include them. Like if we're doing design concepts, we're going to get their feedback. If we're
That's
prototyping,
awesome.
we're going to
Yeah.
talk about it with them. We're going to include them in that process. I'm still the one that's doing all the design work, but like I said, like
Mm.
I just became like, a vessel, like a conduit
Mm.
for their feedback and my partners at Colgate's feedback. But that's an example of like we were doing that in Nairobi, in Kibera, when we were trying to solve challenges in that community.
Mm.
And now fast forward to, yeah, we're making a bottle of soap, but I don't use this bottle of soap. Let's go find the people that do, and let's make them be a part of this process so that whatever we create, at least has some sort of like, authenticity to it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. There's no point creating a wonderful product or process if the person you're designing it for has no idea how to use it or why it even exists. So
Yeah.
involving them
Like
along
I
the way.
wouldn't have done it
Yeah.
that way. It's not from
Yeah,
me.
that's great. And I'm thinking about so many different applications of that as well. I mean, I speak to a lot of engineering businesses where they have an industrial design team, but the industrial designers don't feel listened to because it's an engineering firm, even though there's mandating to push design forward. I think bringing people in and involving them in that kind of that design process and the why and the how, and that might help some people that are in that situation kind of get more buy-in from senior leadership, or get kind of better traction with their marketing team and ultimately with their buyers. It's design kind of, it just transcends everything. But if it's not communicated well, or you're not speaking the same language, design language, then yeah, it's just gonna miss the mark, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really insightful. So what would you say now you've kind of you've been on this journey a little while now? What would you say is kind of been some of your kind of more challenging kind of moments, whether it be kind of managing teams or managing clients, and how have you kind of overcame them, or I guess what lessons have you learned?
Yeah. So many. I think one of the biggest like again, similar to what I was just describing. One of
Mm.
the biggest lessons I've learned is, like the further you go in your career as a creative person, you get better at what you do at your craft. You get
Mm.
more efficient at it. You do it in a lot of different capacities or contexts, and so you have a perception of of what an outcome is going to be before you even do it. All those things are awesome, and they give you a ton of like agency and ability for autonomy. And what's cool is like you can run. Like for me personally, like when I sit down to do a project, like sometimes I have an idea of what it's going to be on the first day. And I think a lot of designers may feel that way. And when you have like this experience and the skill set, you're really powerful. But I think that's also that like power is also your weakness. Like there have been moments in my career where I look back and I'm like, I wish I should have been more transparent. I should have like, I was working with a client and I should have included them in my process a little bit deeper. Even though I knew what was going to happen, they need to come along, they need to come along on the journey with you. So, I mean, I think that's a challenge and a lesson I've learned. I also just in general, there's a lot of like crippling self-doubt that occurs. I mean, like again, I was talking about like you look on LinkedIn and you see people like starting businesses all the time, and you see social media, you see a lot of like designers that, you idolize or you build up to be heroes or whatever. And I don't know, my personal experience, like I've worked at some amazing places. I've had a really cool creative journey. I've started my own company. I got clients, and I'm currently now launching a product for a different company that we started. It's a lot of good stuff happening, but every step of the way, there's a whole lot of like, what the hell am I doing? Is this going to work out? Like holy crap! Like this is going to fail. Like you're going to fall on your face, and so. There's still a whole lot of that, and you gotta again, to me it just always comes back to doing what you love. It's
how do you manage that when that doubt kind of creeps in, because that's natural, and I think people listening to this, if they're freelancing or they set up their own studio or they're trying to launch a product, they'll go through. I know I'm sure as hell have since launching my business, but
yeah.
What drives you forward? What kind of gets you past the imposter syndrome or the doubt?
People. I think I spend a lot of time writing. Like
Yeah.
there'll be moments like in the morning you wake up and you're like, oh man, like, or like your brain likes to do those weird things at night when you wake up from a dream, and like your brain likes to make you think the worst things. And then you wake up the next morning, you're like, it's not going to be nearly as bad as you thought it was at like 3 a.m. But spend some time writing, putting things in perspective, and then just people. Like on my entrepreneurship journey, I'm super lucky to have a wife who supports me, and I'm able to like communicate. She works in advertising, so she's a smarty, so she's really, her opinion means a lot to me and her perspective. But even just random people, like we made this flag football kit for this sporting goods company that we're launching, and there's you just go through so many prototypes as a designer. You're like, test it. Don't be don't press go until you've prototyped it and you feel super confident. And even then you're like, I just spent how much on tooling? Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And then, you go and you show it to people, and they, reaffirm your belief in yourself, and, all the math that you check twice, it kind of, you're like, okay, I'm okay. So I mean,
yeah.
And the thing is, like right now, if you're a freelancer or you're starting a small little design studio, you're going to be alone a lot. And so that there's a lot of opportunity for that self-doubt to creep in. And you just, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, whether it's former colleagues or other people that you work with, like finding a community that you can, reflect with and bounce stuff off of and can hype you up and you can hype them up. I think that's kind of the key, because it never stops. I guess that's the thing that's really surprising, is I think a lot of designers, especially early in their career, think, man, if I could just get to here, I'll be set. And the truth is, like, every time you get to a new place in your career, you're instantly the worst at whatever that is that you can be. Like you were just the best junior designer, and now you got to be a senior designer. You're the worst senior designer that's ever lived, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have tons of self doubt. And the sooner you like embrace the fact that you're supposed to be bad, you know, at whatever that is the first time, it's a little bit better. I mean, the stakes do get higher, you know, because you're like, at some point you're, you know, I'm the worst at starting a company I've ever been, you know, but, you know, the stakes are a little bit higher, but, you know, you just embrace that fact. You have people around you that can help you and give you perspective, and that kind of helps you get you through.
I think you lose sight of that as you get older, don't you? And as you get kind of further into your career, that actually failing is just part of the process. You've got, like you say, you've got to be terrible at the start because it's new, and you've got to.
Yeah.
And the best way to learn is to fall over a bunch of times until you can run. It's
That's like my
yeah,
favorite thing I ever tell like junior designers when I was like a creative leader was to tell them that they're supposed to suck. Like you got hired for your potential, right?
yeah,
You know, but like you need to like build your skills now. Like you know, it's okay. Like you got hired because you have good taste. Now, like let's get better at like making things that meet that taste. And yeah, I always wanted that when I was first coming up. I wanted someone to tell me like, dude, you suck, and it's okay. You're supposed to suck. Like you haven't gotten your 10,000 hours in. Like it's cool, but let's do it together. And you know, suck every day but Friday. Like if you don't communicate, if you don't talk to anyone, if you don't share your work, and you wait till Friday, we will be working late, and we will be working on the weekend because we're not going to like turn in something that we don't like as a collective. But if you suck every single day and you communicate it, we'll be fine by Friday. By Friday, we'll have it fixed. And so that's a thing like no one told me. And so you sit there by yourself with your sheet of paper. And man, like once I realized that, man, I love telling young designers that because I feel like it's freeing. You're like, okay,
oh yeah,
nothing wrong with me. All right, you got my back. All right, we'll figure it out together. It doesn't have to be right until the very end.
yeah, absolutely. We need more, definitely more of that. I think as any level going into a role where it might just be a new facet of the role that you're learning. Like if you're not communicating with people along the way, that week can feel like a long time if you're not making any progress and you're not talking to people asking for help, because it only takes a kind of a colleague or a boss or a spouse to say, you've got this, kind of keep going, kind of you're doing a
Yeah.
great job, kind of getting to that point, you know.
I mean,
That's what
there
it
are
takes.
moments where you have to take a leap of faith, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a difference between like recklessness and belief, you know,
Yeah.
like you can take a leap of faith, like being completely reckless, and that's probably not going to be great for you. But if you have those people giving you feedback, if you're able to put things in perspective, if you are conscientious and you've prepared yourself as much, I like to think about it like a stunt man, right? Like in a movie, like
Yeah.
these people do things that will kill them, and they rehearse what they're doing over and over and over again to literally mitigate death. And then they go do it, and it still could kill them. And so, like, that's the thing as a creative person, as an entrepreneur, you know, like you got to check you check your list, like get it correct. And when you're ready, go fast, because that's the only way you can do it. Like you can't do anything slow. You have to do it fast because that's the only way you can be successful. But don't do it recklessly, you know, like do it because you're prepared. And so that's, you know, how I kind of feel about, you know, being a designer, being an entrepreneur. It's kind of like being a stunt person.
Wow. That's definitely going to be one of those snippets that I share to promote the show. Wonderful. So let's talk about the kind of you've mentioned it a couple of times now, the football flags project. What's it called? Is it literally called Football Flag? No, WinWin
WinWin
Athletics.
Athletics.
Yeah. So how did that come about then?
Yeah, WinWin Athletics is it's been a little thing in the back of my mind for a while. And then, you know, I'm a design person and I'm a sports person. I still play as many sports as I can. I coach all my kids' youth teams. And I was coaching my son's flag football team a few years ago, and I remembered how janky the gear was. But then we were using it, and like the first 15 minutes of every practice or game, I was like mending belts and retightening things and trimming, and it was brutal. And so my worlds as a design dad and a sports dad overlapped, and so we're like, let's do something. And so WinWin is it's a sports brand for everyday athletes. Like we want to solve everyday sports problems. There are a lot of companies that help us run faster and jump higher, and they're all awesome. But there's no brand that helps a person like me just play better, whether it's in my backyard or at the beach or at a big game. I'm not a professional athlete, and there's a lot of people that aren't professional athletes, but we still want to play sports. And so we've been designing for a lot of different sports and for a lot of different products, but we decided to launch with flag football because it's a lifelong sport. You play it when you're young, you play it when you're old. Boys play it, girls play it, adults play it. You can play it for keeps, you can play it for fun. And so the first thing that we created was this. This is a football field that you can carry. This is everything that you need to play 5-on-5 flag football. So you got.
So obviously I know what flag football is, but for those that are listening that maybe in the UK or Europe that aren't familiar with flag football, obviously I know about it, but maybe perhaps you could share briefly what it is and how it differs to normal kind of American football.
So flag football is just the most accessible version of American football. Instead of being tackled, players wear flags on their waist, usually attached to a belt, and you pull the flag to tackle someone instead of knocking them down and hitting them. It's generally played like 5-on-5 or 7-on-7. It's a fun, fast, like it's very high scoring. There's a lot of offense. There are not many linemen. Sometimes there's one or two, but it's growing immensely. I think it's gone from being like a recreational sport to where it's going to be in the Olympics in 2028. So,
awesome.
So we started this journey long before, that Olympic decision was made, but, flag football's having a moment right now, and we're glad to kind of be a part of it. But so it's an awesome game. Some people play it because they have no interest in ever playing tackle football, for injury reasons or whatnot. But some people play it because it is like they love tackle football. It's just an easier, more accessible version of it. It's growing, especially among women and girls. It's there's like I said, in the Olympics, it's a varsity sport for young women in a lot of states, and I think before you know it, it'll be a Division I sport where young women will get scholarships to play it in college. So
that's awesome.
Cool.
So I guess it's probably a little bit more free flowing than a traditional game of football, which is lots of plays, isn't it? And stop start. But
there's still
that
plays.
sounds awesome.
There's still plays, but it's much more. It's much quicker, shorter field, and a lot more offense.
Awesome, that's great. So you when does that launch, or is that still to be decided?
It's launching. It's launched right now. You can pre-order on our website, WinWin Athletics. If you follow us on Instagram, we have some early bird discounts coming out. We'll be shipping our first kits in May, and we've been talking with folks like the NFL about adopting it. We've had some cool conversations with them. We just went to a big physical education trade show last week, and I think I was a PE teacher in a different life. There was just a lot of good vibes at this conference. People loved it, and we had a great response. So
that's awesome. Well, we'll definitely put a link to the Instagram and to the website and where people can kind of find out more about that in the show notes. And that's really exciting. So I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
So if we kind of just wrap things up soon, but before we get to that, in terms of kind of career advice, I guess, and kind of people who are thinking about a career in design or thinking about making changes, industrial design has seen somewhat of an evolution, I guess, over recent years, especially with the advent of AI that's potentially putting facets of the role in jeopardy. What would you say would be wise for aspiring designers to consider in terms of the courses or the things that they focus on, or indeed kind of I don't know, middle or senior kind of designers looking to step? So what tools do they need in their armory to be relevant to
Yeah,
today?
that's a great question, and I at the risk of being like seen as a luddite, I have yet to use any AI tools that I know of. And I feel bad about it because I probably should. I see a lot of designers playing, with Midjourney and these like visualization tools and these like
Mm,
sketching things, and I think it's cool. I think it's really cool. If I were a young designer, I would certainly be tinkering with that. I think as a middle-aged designer, I should be. I
mm,
should be playing with it more. I should be learning about it. I think there's some people that are scared of AI or what it
mm,
might do to their career. I think, and who knows? Maybe it will. Maybe it will be bad. I don't know. But so far, like every in industrial design and a lot of other industries, there's always been like a technological change, and it has
mm,
affected it. It hasn't ended it. And so, at least from an industrial design standpoint, I think one of the things I think about though, when I see, especially young designers using,
mm,
AI visualization tools. Pretty soon you'll probably be able to like sketch something and they'll turn it into CAD. The thing I think about though is I think about like my foundational education. I was explaining to my two young sons the other day like how I learned like color theory in college. Like we had to like literally paint gouache chips like each shade of every color, and then we had to like put them together into like a perfect gradient, using only like 10 chips, and that was the time where they're like, you have to do this before you can use Photoshop. Like once you use Photoshop, you'll be able to do it like instantaneously, but you're gonna do this. I think like it's like that old saying, like you have to learn the rules before you break the rules. I think
yeah.
my advice to like young designers is yes, embrace those tools, but don't forget to learn why those tools work in the first place.
Mm,
Don't forget to become a good designer. You know, when we were using CAD, when we were building, getting CAD, in college and learning how to use rendering software, it was still
mm.
like understand what good proportion is, understand how this thing's going to be made. Like before you use these fancy tools, learn the old way, and not to
Yeah.
be like some stodgy, like it was better in my day type of perspective. But before you start to use things that are going to accelerate your design process, understand what you're trying to get out of this tool.
Mm,
And so, because sometimes I see portfolio pieces, from design students that have AI generated
mm.
renderings in them, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if you're a good designer or not. It's like
Yeah, absolutely.
and so I think in a lot of ways these AI tools are really great for creative people who have experience in their craft because they expedite some things. And I
Hmm.
think my fear is that like young designers are don't expedite too much, like still,
Yeah.
learn how to be a good designer, learn how to sketch, learn how to communicate your ideas, learn how to make decisions on what something should look like. And then once you get good at that, yeah, that tool is going to help you do it quicker and more efficiently. Maybe unlock perspectives that you didn't have going
Mm.
in, but get that foundation as a designer, in a well-rounded way first.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I remember going to see Design Partners years ago, and they had blue foam models of mice that they were working on for Logitech everywhere. And it's
There's
like,
nothing that beats it, man. There's
yeah,
nothing like, I'm
absolutely.
sorry. Human beings have been making and collecting physical objects since we were in caves.
Yeah.
It's not going to end. And there's something amazingly magical when you put a prototype down on a table and people touch it for the first time. It blows their
Absolutely, yeah.
mind. It's awesome. So
Mm.
yeah, as cool as all this stuff is, blue foam is always going to be awesome too.
That's it, yeah. You can't touch a render. You can't feel where the buttons are in position to your thumbs in the case of a gaming controller or a mouse. And you, yeah, their policy was everything starts as a sketch and then it's modeled. And then when we're happy with how it feels, then we'll put it into CAD. Because it just
Yeah,
reminded me what you said about the perspective. It could be huge.
there were some old heads at IDEO when I was there. This was not
Yeah.
everybody did this, but there were some like old heads that were like, no
Mm.
prototype, no meeting. So
Yeah.
unless you have a prototype, unless you have something to share and touch, like let's not have a meeting. Go make the thing, and then we'll talk
Yeah.
about
And now everyone's just wearing Apple Vision Pros and they're having
it.
digital.
Exactly. That's a whole new level. Yeah. Back to our
Yeah.
conversation about isolation.
Awesome. Well, look, we're kind of getting close to time. But I've got some very kind of quick, kind of rapid fire questions, if you like. Favorite book or podcast that you're into at the moment?
I would say books. I got a couple
Mm.
for you here. I thought about this. Um, Rosie Revere, Engineer. This
Okay.
is a book I've been reading to my kids. There's a whole series of these. This is about a little girl
Nice.
who is an engineer, and it's all about her failing and learning from failure. I actually read this book to a design team I was leading a few years ago.
Amazing.
It's absolutely cool. It's
What's that
like
called? Rosie Revere.
Rosie Revere, Engineer. It's by
Yeah.
Abrams. I don't know what their first name is, but it's awesome. Very beautifully illustrated. It's great for kids. Like I said,
Yeah.
I read it to designers, to adults. It's awesome, and it's all about her not believing in herself because she kept failing. She kept building these
Yeah.
prototypes and they wouldn't work. And then she has a relative like explain to her like, no, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so it's pretty cool. I also like anything from Oliver Jeffers. Again, like
Yeah.
I'm a father of two little boys, so I'm reading a lot of books to these kids. But this is the Fate of Fausto. It's pretty sick. He's a really awesome storyteller. He's a really great illustrator.
Mm.
Um, and again,
Oh,
like
that's cool. Yeah.
man, this like as someone that tells stories for a living as well as
Mm.
designs things, he is really able to he not many words, but a whole lot of feelings. And
Mm.
it's so anything Oliver Jeffers writes and illustrates is pretty sick.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to check those out. I'm thinking about maybe even doing a giveaway for the Rosie Revere one as well, because I think that would be quite fun to share with people on there through the
It's a great
channel.
one.
So awesome. And then I feel weird asking this because I'm a similar age to yourself, kind of middle age. It's but social influencers, kind of who's the best voice that you're following right now in design?
In design, oh man,
Yeah.
that's a good question. When you said this, I was like, I've been following a lot of like influencers related to flag football recently, and I've been
Yeah.
following this guy called the Angry Gym Teacher. He's like a gym teacher. First of all, they're phys ed teachers,
Yeah.
but like he calls himself the Angry Gym Teacher. He's a PE teacher that is also a comedian. His stuff is
Yeah.
awesome. But as far as the world of design, I don't know. I don't like follow many people. This is a boring answer. I'm sorry. I don't follow like many people related to the design field. I mean, I follow design firms. I love
Yeah.
like when I was first starting out, like I was like a Coraflot junkie. I was constantly like
Yeah.
looking at what design firms were putting out there. And now the cool thing about Instagram is I follow a
Mm.
handful of design firms, more than that, and always seeing what they're doing is sick. So I mostly just
Yeah.
follow design firms.
Cool. Okay, that's good. So super. So we'll wrap it up now. Is there anyone that you want to shout out to, or kind of how can people reach out to you? Is LinkedIn the best way, or Instagram?
LinkedIn is a great spot. You can hit me up. My email for people, places, and things is
Mm.
Jeff at ppt.studio. That's GEOFF at
Cool.
ppt.studio. And like I said, go check out winwinathletics.com and follow us on Instagram, winwin_athletics.
Will do. I'll put links to those in the show notes as well. So expect to be bombarded from salespeople, at least, and aspirational designers. But Jeff, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you today. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And
Thanks for having
we'll
me,
speak
Chris.
again soon. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like and subscribe and tell all of your friends. In the meantime, just a quick note from me. In addition to hosting this podcast, I also run a recruitment business called Kodu. For over a decade, I've worked within the physical product development space, helping startups and established brands hire mechanical design and development talent from mid-weight up to C-suite. I've worked in consumer electronics, e-bikes, femtech, medical devices, design consultancy, basically user-focused stuff. And it's the wonderful people I've met over the years that have inspired me to create this podcast. If you'd like to learn how I can help you hire top-tier design and development talent for your business, please head over to teamkodu.com or message me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.